Challenges come, but our strength will last. Wisdom meets vision, we light the way. Standing together, we won't fade away. Young and old, side by side, bridging the gap with truth and pride. The times may change, but the heart remains. Let's connect, break the chains, bridging generations, voices of men, from the past to the future, we rise again. Different views, but the bond stays strong. We listen, we learn, we all belong. We're living in a world that's shifting fast. New challenges come, but our strength will last. Wisdom meets vision, we light the way. Standing together, we won't fade away. And joined in war, a brand new stage. We must rise to meet the age. With open minds and hearts that lead. Together we grow, together we succeed. Bridging generations, voices of men, in a changing world. In a changing world.
Greetings, friends of the A Collision with Purpose movement. Welcome to Bridging Generations, Voices of Men in a Changing World. I am Dr. Laxley Stephenson. This groundbreaking podcast delves into the multifaceted experiences of men across different generations. In an era where societal norms and expectations rapidly evolve, this show offers young and older men a unique platform to voice their challenges, triumphs, and perspectives.
Each episode aims to foster understanding and bridge the gap between generations, exploring themes ranging from masculinity and mental health to career dynamics and personal relationships. By bringing together voices from varied age groups, the show sheds light on the commonalities and differences in the male experience, encouraging open dialogue and mutual learning. I am Dr. Garfield McCook, one of your hosts.
And like my hosts were saying, so this show definitely bridges the gaps between and through conversations. So whether it's a teenager grappling with the pressures of social media or a senior reflecting on the changing definitions of manhood, Bridging Generations is committed to uncovering the real stories of men navigating the complexities of a changing world. I'm another one of your co-hosts, Dr. Juan Marcel. Doc, turning it over to you. What is going on? What's new? It's a new week, new month.
Gentlemen, what is new? Not only is it a new week, it's a new month. It's May.
Yeah.
And the question is, how did we get here so fast?
Time
flies when you're having fun.
Absolutely. We are having fun indeed. And not just having fun, we're doing meaningful work.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And when you're doing meaningful work, and a lot of meaningful work, time seems to go by real fast. And I think that's what's happening. That's what's happening. Dr. McCook.
Yes, sir.
You have big things about to go down.
Yes.
We have an event coming up May 17th.
17th, yes.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so on May 17th, we'll have our second annual Afro-Caribbean High School Jammings. And this is an event which is a fundraiser for our event on July 26th, which is the JIIFSC final. So here it is, Afro-Caribbean High School Jammings is where folks like you, Doc, myself, and Dr. Juan, and everyone else who is watching we're going to come to that event to wear the uniform we wore in our high school, wherever we were in the world. And as I say, if it doesn't fit, do not quit. Just go out and buy the material. I were there last year. Some people could still fit. I remember one guy, he wore a tie, but for some reason the tie now is now shorter. But it's a good event. It's a 501. GIFs is a 501c3. So some of the proceeds are going to be going to an educational cause. And again, it's going to be May 17th at Front Page. You can look at the website, jiifsc.com. It's going to be grand. Last year, we had a great time. We had about 20-something schools being represented from around the world, Jamaica mainly. But this year, again, we're looking forward to see what Dr. Juan will wear. He went to school here. Dr. Juan, you will have to get your high school uniform together and get all your buddies who went to high school. Let's come out and listen to some great music. And on that night also, normally we will announce our top 10 or 12 for the GIFs finals or semifinals. We'll normally do it on the 15th of May. This year we're going to make a slight change since we're going to have this grand event on the 17th, and we're going to do the announcement there. So a lot is in store for you all listening out there. See you, jiifsc.com.
And of course, this time it's not just for Jamaican schools.
Yes.
You want to talk about that?
Yes. So it's not just for Jamaican school. Last year it was more a Jamaican thing. This year is the Afro, because we have gotten a lot of feedback. People got jealous of how us as Jamaicans doing these things and they can't. So we switched it around. So we have Afro, which is for African countries, and then Afro-Caribbean. So not just Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana, Barbados, all of the different flavored countries out there in the Caribbean are going to be there representing. So it should be a difference this year. And we're going to have the prize for the most authentic uniform. So we're going to find a way out to do that. But Dr. Lax came last year well attired. I didn't recognize him. I said, "Who is that schoolboy?" And he says, "Me, teacher." So, looking forward to another great,
last year I wore, my tie was a little bit small, but it worked. So Juan, we're looking forward to having you present.
I'm excited.
Yeah, what high school did you go to, Dr. Juan?
Lithonia High School. Lithonia High School.
Did they wear uniforms?
No, we didn't, but we were the black and gold. Those were our colors. We were Bulldogs, and Golden Elegance was our drill team. So, yeah, black and gold.
All right. So we'll make sure when we see you there, they'll come around to you and they'll be interviewing individuals. So make sure you have your speech ready to tell who you are.
I absolutely will. I'll be ready.
Now, we have a big show tonight, about a very serious topic. But before we go there, Juan, Dr. Juan, bring us up to speed on where you are with your work.
Well, I'm actually I'm developing a curriculum, and it's about interpersonal skills for teenagers. Every other Saturday, I work with a foundation. I actually sit on a board, and I'm a director for servant leadership development and service learning. And so I'm creating a curriculum on service learning, teaching teenagers how significant it is to make an impact on your community, and how to lead through service. So I'm working on that currently. And, like I stated before, I'm working on my first book. So I'm putting in some work, doing some writing, trying to just join these great men before me, my co-hosts. So.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to your book.
Yes.
Looking forward to your book. Can't wait to get it.
A lot of energy in that book, I see.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of a time frame, what's the expectations?
I was pushing for this summer. I haven't let that go. I'm pushing myself, trying to get it done by the end of this summer. So by the end of July, that is the goal. The end of the summer.
So maybe one of these days you'll give us a sneak preview. A little
Absolutely.
taste of
Absolutely.
it. All right.
Absolutely.
So, again, welcome to Bridging Generation, Voices of Men in a Changing World. And are we living in a changing world? Today we're going to have a conversation, a discussion, an interactive one about healing the wounds Fathers breaking generational curses through presence, purpose, and love. So this episode of Bridging Generation is going to explore how modern fathers are, especially those from minority backgrounds, are consciously breaking generational cycles of emotional absence, silence, and discontent. Again, this is about rewriting our legacy, showing up with love, vulnerability, and presence. You know, we are living in a time where many children are growing up in the shadows of unspoken wounds, inherited silence, and broken family patterns. So today, we are going to confront this reality head on. The objective of today's show is to bring together fathers who have dared to confront their past, embrace healing, and model a new way forward for their families. Again, this is not just about conversation or about perfection. It is about progress. It is about what happens when a man decides to be the turning point in his family, to no longer carry the weight of pain in the next generation, and to redefine strength, not as how much he can hold in, but how much he's willing to let go of and grow. Again, so welcome everyone who's watching. We ask you to share this broadcast, and we ask you to get involved. Be a part of the conversation. All right, so let us take a quick break and then we'll jump in. All right.
I'm a boy kid, I'm a boy kid. I'm a boy kid, I'm a boy kid. I wake up in the morning and I praise the Lord. I thank Him for His protection, and I walk in His steps, declaring that today's provision is set up for me. I love God and I love my friends. Yeah, I'm a bold kid. I'm a bold kid. I'm a bold kid. I put on my armor and I write His word, blessing come out of my mouth. Cause I know to whom I belong, I am bold for Christ. Holy Spirit dwelling within me, carrying His presence wherever He sends me. I'm a bold kid, I'm a bold kid. I'm a bold kid, I'm a bold kid. Loving others as He told me to pray for healing, miracles to see, knowing my identity in Christ, He is in me. I am a bold kid, He loves me, standing firm on His word, proclaiming everything I heard, not afraid because He is with me. Be bold. I'm a bold kid, I'm a bold kid, I'm a bold kid, I'm a bold kid. I put on my armor and I let His word blessing come out of my mouth. Because I know to whom I belong, I am bold for Christ. Holy Spirit dwelling within me, carrying His presence wherever He sends me. I'm a bold kid, I'm a bold kid. I'm a bold kid, I'm a bold kid.
All right, welcome back to Bridging Generation, Voices of Men in a Changing World. And today we're talking about healing, right? We're talking about healing. And our first segment is about the inheritance of absence, becoming the father you never had. And of course, as always, we posted in the chat the question, and the question is, what kind of fathering or lack thereof did you experience growing up? One, we're going to go by age. So you're going to lead off.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'll take that, Doc. What kind of fathering or lack thereof did I experience growing up? Real quickly, my dad was 19 when I was born. So I had not to call my dad a child or a kid, but he was a young man who was unfathered in a sense himself. So I had a young father, young in heart, young in mind, young in experience. And so he didn't have many tools or resources to work with when I was coming up. So there was a lack of fathering or fatherhood, if you will, when I was coming up, because he was young. You know, we moved from home, which home was Oklahoma. My parents were early 20s, just fresh out of college, so he was trying to figure it out, so he did the best he could. So there wasn't, I think at that age, being so young, you're trying to figure out how to parent, how to father, but also trying to provide and still trying to figure yourself out, how to be a man, all of these different things. I think there was a search for identity. So if he's trying to find him, he was trying to find himself. He didn't know how to be a father. So it wasn't there. So my dad was growing up when I was growing up. So that was my experience.
You were both growing up.
Yeah.
Powerful. Dr. McCook, you want to jump in?
Yeah, well, the topic is very interesting. Becoming a father you never had. I had a dad that was ever present. So I was blessed to be in a two-parent household. My dad was a vet, worked for the Ministry of Agriculture in Jamaica. So it was a very great time. As a vet, they gave you housing, so you actually lived on the farm, and that's why I keep on telling people I'm a country boy and proud of it. I know how to milk cows, I know how to ride good, and all that stuff. So it was a great experience. And seeing him there, and he was a businessman, and that's why I think I'm a businessman today. I sort of followed in his footsteps. Or we all my siblings are, they own their own businesses. So my dad was there. Sadly, he left us when I was 13 years old. So the topic about absence, my absence is not that I had an absent father, but from 13 onwards, which I think are the prime years that you need to have that dad in your life. That part I never had, and I always missed, thinking of what that would be, or would have been. But he was there. Great father.
And it's interesting, Dr. McCook, because for some of us, it was father just not been there. But in your case, it was a situation that was quite tragic.
Yeah.
Quite tragic, which brings on a whole different situation in your life. So, again, for me, much like Juan, my father, he was not present physically or emotionally.
Yeah.
A good man, nevertheless, but in his own personal life, he lost both his parents as a child, and he grew up with his grandparent. So where did he learn to become a father? He didn't. He didn't have that experience. So I had to learn to deal with it. The good thing is I had good, strong men around me. Look, with family members. And I had a mother who was amazingly strong. So I was able to learn and grow. And to be honest, I didn't feel like I missed anything. What I did was I learned from that situation, because when you have that type of love around you, siblings and other people around you, you sort of make up for some of what you're missing. No, I'm not saying that you can ever make up for not having that male presence. The person that you call your dad or whatever you choose to call it in your life. But so it took me years for me to realize that what I miss most was not just the connection. Well, it really was the connection and not other things, not physical things, but having that connection is what I miss mostly. So, and I would venture to say that there are many, many individuals out there, respective of your ethnicity, your race, your whatever, who experience what some of us experience. And some of us were able to turn it around. Others are still stuck in that place. And that is why we're having this conversation today, especially for those who are stuck in that place, because it's about creating awareness. So thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. Now, the question is, we have lived our lives the way we have, but when did we realize that we needed to be different than our fathers? Before you answer that, Dr. Juan, let's say thanks, Dr. Reed, for joining us. Thank you, Elizabeth Sitawa. And
hey, Elizabeth.
You're out there watching us from wherever you are. We know you're watching us from Kenya and other parts of the world, so we appreciate you joining us today. All right, Juan, so when did you realize you want to do this whole thing different than your dad did?
I was I'll say a very angry teenager. Didn't respect authority. You couldn't talk me any kind of way. You couldn't try to tell me what to do, especially male figures or men in authority. And I struggled with that. Oftentimes I would go off or, say something slick or you lose my temper. And that carried on. Of course, that's what I saw growing up from the men in my family, especially my dad. And so I carried this for so many years and I didn't want to be that way. Not realizing that I was becoming that man, behaving that way. And I think when my early 20s, I realized when I found out that I could actually choose the man I wanted to become. I was, just short tempered, slick mouth, especially in relationships. It was just really bad. I didn't listen, very condescending. Just my attitude was piss poor. And I realized the effect that my presence, I always knew that I was a thermostat. Whatever room I step into, it shifts the atmosphere. But what was happening, it was shifting it in a negative way. And that broke me because I never wanted to leave that impression with anybody. I hate to see Juan coming. He got a bad attitude. Or don't set him off, or don't make him mad. And I didn't want that to be my story and to be said about me. So I made up my mind. I was like, I don't know what I need to do or how to get there, but I want to be a different man, become a different man, a different person. I want people to feel warm and welcomed and feel empowered and feel better when they leave my presence or when they're around me. So I made that decision. I was like, I don't want to continue this way. I needed to change. I needed to shift. I was carrying some things that I didn't even know or understand, but I knew it was getting the best of me.
And that change was about you, to take care of you. Take care of you. Dr. McCook, your experience is a little bit different from your perspective. Talk to us from your perspective.
Yeah, well, losing your dad at 13, you sort of grow up much quicker. There were options that I could have taken, but you guys mentioned strong mothers. So my mom became my father. So she did the mother and the father thing. So, based on that short time that we had him, I was able to see his work ethic. I was able to see his love for family. I was able to learn what it meant to be a man in that short space of time. Because I remember, especially during the summer holidays, he was a businessman. He had a chicken farm, he had a bar, he had a grocery store, he had all that stuff. So me and my brother would go there and actually work during the summer. So from an early age, that was he invested so much in us in that short space of time. Sometimes I look back and I said, this man looked like he knew he was going. So let me get these boys and these young ladies ready for the real world. So the knowledge from that time, I grew up much quicker than I think most of my other friends grew up, because here it is, there's a household with just a mom. Things that dad used to do, you can't do what dad used to do because you can't drive, you can't do all that stuff. But it taught you to do as much as you could to fill that gap, and don't give mommy no headache, because 4 kids. I was 13, my brother was 14, my sister was 12, and my little sister was 9. So 4 little babies. So I grew up quicker, and then I went to work pretty early. While my siblings went off to college and all that stuff, I decided that I had to help mom. So I went to work. So I did at a tender age of 18. So it was interesting, but it made me who I am today. So again, although it was short but compact with information that I've really gained from.
So you had to grow up fast, no? It was forced into action, so to speak.
Yes,
all right. So let's bring Augusta is on. Let's bring him on the screen. And welcome, Augusta.
Hey, gentlemen, how are we doing today? How are we doing?
Hey, how you doing, sir?
Brother.
You know, blessed to leaving the office, going through this Atlanta traffic, saw a couple of accidents. So man, blessed to be in the land of the living. Blessed to be in the
Yes,
land of the
sir.
living,
Yes,
man.
sir.
Sheesh.
Welcome, welcome.
So the question is becoming the father you never had. And that's a theme for this segment. And this question is, when did you realize you needed to be different? And for me is the moment I became a father and felt the weight of that responsibility. I knew I had to be different just then.
Mm.
So, and of course, I've never had this thing modeled to me in front of me because not growing up with my father, never had that, never having that kind of relationship with my own father. You know, none of the emotional connection or guidance. It was mainly distance, right? So there was that void. There was that void. And I knew it that I did not want my children, my daughters, to grow up guessing and trying to figure out what it was like to have a father. So right then and there, the very moment I had children, I said, I am going to be different. In fact, it was a conscious decision that I will fulfill my role. I will be present full time. So Augusta, we toss a question to you. When did you realize that you had to be that father?
I think for me, I don't believe I can say confidently it wasn't once I had children. I think due to my birth father leaving at a relatively early age, watching my mom do what she did, then my stepfather who raised me coming in, even in like that period, there was for me just growing up where we grew up. I joke with my sister about the fact that we didn't realize, we lived in gang riddled, drug violent, women selling their bodies, children, like we didn't realize we lived in those neighborhoods until we grew up. Like, so it was seeing that outside and then returning home to a home that was the polar opposite of what my sister and I saw when we walked. I knew I wanted to be different at 7, 8 years old. You know, by the time, I was 10 and 11 years old, sadly attending funerals for classmates, who weren't going for natural causes. These were people whose lives were cut down mostly due to gang violence. So for me, it didn't take me to become a father. It like I realized I need to be different for everyone in my life at 7, 8 years old. I was like, this is the life that, the areas we lived in were not conducive to people who wanted long-term life. So I just realized at a very young age, I can't do what other people are doing. I can't move the way other people are moving. And I didn't use not having, my father in the house as well, I could just do this. I really just knew very young, man, I can't be like y'all. I don't want to be like y'all. And even looking back, I laughed with Tremaine about a story last night, and I won't go into detail, but there was an instance where I put myself in a very bad situation in my early teens. And I look back on that situation and I'm thankful because in that moment, I'm like, it really could have been it in that moment. And it was constantly me being like, well, let me try. And that was probably the last time where I really said, I want to be like something that I'm really, that everything has been telling me fight against. And I look back and one of those people incarcerated for the remainder of their life. The other one is doing currently a 15-year bid, and the other one is just in and out of prison. And I look at it and I said, I was meant not to be like y'all. And I saw it young. And even I realized no matter how much I try to push to fit into this hole, it's not going to work. So yeah, I knew at a very young age, by the time I had kids, I said, oh yeah, no, it's just going to be different for you. I need to be present. I need to be active because I saw not just the people who didn't have it, but I saw the people who didn't have it and use it as an excuse to, go and fit a certain and particular narrative. So yeah, I knew at a very young age, and I don't want to be like y'all. I got to be different. I got to be different for the people who love me and for the people I love.
It's interesting that the difference in our situation is a decision. Often it's a decision, right?
Absolutely.
And at the time, you don't realize the impact of the decision that you're making. You really don't realize that. And I don't really want to go off course. I don't really want to go off course. We have quite a few questions, important questions as we, to cover the topic tonight. Elizabeth Setawa said, shout out to all the fathers out here breaking generational curses, not with perfection, but with presence, purpose, and love. Your healing is changing futures. And that is so true.
Woo, good.
And that is from someone who is dealing with her own challenges, but she recognized the importance of having that person. Now, let's move to the next segment, the decision to show up. The decision to show up, and I'll post a question in here. And how do you define being a present father? Not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. And Juan, you're a lead-off person today, of course.
Okay, so how do I define being a present father? I would say being in tune and being in the moment. I think just thinking about being present is just being in that moment. And I think being in that moment affords you the opportunity to really just interact and be in tune with your child or your children. So I think the biggest thing with being present is being in tune. If I can define it, I would say being in tune.
Being in tune. Any comments on that, gentlemen, before we go to our own explanation?
Yeah, I mean, being in tune is just, as we have always used, being intentional. So I guess that's what he is. That's what he chose to do based on experience, and he learned. So he didn't want to repeat what had happened to him. So kudos to you, my brother.
All right, Dr. McCook, you're on deck, so you might as well continue.
Well, I don't know. I always thought of a family, and I always wanted to be a dad, and I always said I wanted two kids. And I said, this may sound funny, but if it's gonna be two of the same sex, please let it be boys. and I got my wish. But because again, I didn't have a father, I wanted to make sure that these two young men had a father. And for those just listening, I didn't have a father because he passed when I was 13. So that's what I meant. And when you talk about the physical and emotional and spiritual, I mean, we grew up we're God-fearing people, and I remember when my little boys were young, and they had their little either the ear, whatever happening with their ears or their nose or the stuffy and all that stuff. It's a story I tell, and I'm not afraid to tell it. I saw my darling wife take that little thing and trying to get stuff out, because, they're stuffy and all that stuff. And to me, it wasn't working. These boys were basically stifling. And I also hear my grandmother talk about what they do. And trust me, I closed one nose and I did. And I went down and I took that thing out and spit it out. I mean, that's how close I was. And that's me as a dad. I felt so proud of myself. While my wife was saying, "Oh, I can't do that," but I did it. So that was me, my emotional part, and the spiritual part. I mean, just reading the Bible to them. Used to read stories to them, and the younger one, you kind of read a story, and because they want to go on and on, you always say the end, and they say, "You finish?" Yeah, but anytime they hear the end, it's me, and they're not smart enough to know that is shortcutting them. But it created a bond, which I'm proud of.
Mm-hmm. A bond that you're proud of. Yes, I am seeing it as consistency, right? Being attentive and being available to them, to your children. Not only
Available. Yeah.
celebrating their achievements, but also when you need to offer advice, corrections, when you're dealing with their challenges, their sadness, and even when they're having doubts about certain things in life, just been there. Just been there for them all the time. And that, of course, that would include when physical, spiritual, and emotionally. But just to be there and just to hear them and understand that they too can also be the provider of guidance for you.
Mm-hmm.
That not because you're the parent, don't mean you know it all. And just be open to listen and be attentive to their needs, and celebrate them as well.
Yeah.
Celebrate
Yeah.
them. I think that showing up, being present is what that is about. Augusta.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think of my perspective on this is always, as someone who, for those of first time watchers, I'm a little late. Augusta Foster. I have a basketball team, 5 children. So, and I always speak from a perspective of, I'm I always count it as a blessing. I'm able to speak from the perspective as a divorced dad, as a stepfather, as a father from distance, and as a father who, a second child by a woman who I'm about to marry. So I've run the gamut, if you will. And so when I speak about, the importance and how fatherhood works, I always like specifically speaking to somewhat the men who are in my situation or who've experienced it. Because I think a lot of times you arrive at a place where, say divorce happens, and how do you then father? How do you parent? And I've learned like the important role, and even from that distance fatherhood from 8-9 states away. One, like I will always be needed, no matter, I never pay attention to, and I tell people, discourage you from listening to social media narratives that are painted that you aren't needed or your presence isn't important or not felt. It is highly important. I will always say, as Doc said, your consistency, your intentionality. But the biggest thing is the acknowledgement that regardless of whether you be married, whether you be divorced, whether you be separated, whether you be a baby daddy, the acknowledgement that you still own that title of father.
Mm-hmm.
And once you're able to take ownership of this title applies to me, meaning there are a number of things that I must do. And everything my grandfather said, it comes down to want to. And I've said this 100 times on here. Your ability to be a father is the want to. If you just want to check out and decide, I don't want to do this, I want to distance myself, that is your choice. And the ramifications are seen later. We see it every day in society. On the flip side, if you want to be there, come hell or high water, you'll figure a way. But it boils down to acknowledging the fact that I have this title. I want to wear it proudly. And what am I going to do to make sure that I'm there? Am I going to be present via phone, via email, via physically? I'm different from a lot of people. I'm blessed to be able to just go jump on a plane and say, let me attend this graduation, this meeting, this, that. Others don't have that. But the physical presence is awesome. But if you've got to do it by phone, by email, we're doing this on a Zoom. You can get it done, but it comes down to want to. If you want to be an active and present father whose children are producing fruit, and your legacy is really something lasting and impactful to society, you will find a way, and no man, woman, court, state, or anybody else will stop you.
And the court plays a big role, right?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Mm.
Juan know the
Yeah.
Juan
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Who will?
We
That's a
welcome
different story.
Control. And Elizabeth said being a present father means more than just being there physically. It's about showing up emotionally as well. It's listening, supporting, hugging, guiding, and being fully engaged in your child's life.
Fully
Not just as
engaged.
a provider, but as a protector, teacher, and safe space.
That's the real.
Saying these from deep inside my heart. And, it'd be interesting to have a female, a daughter
Yeah.
on the panel, right?
Yeah.
To get their perspective
Yeah.
as we're having this conversation. So
Yeah.
that's something we can consider in the future. But listening to the conversation and how it's going, where did we learn to become a father? Where did we get our lessons from? Is it trial and error? How did we get?
Oh yeah.
on
knowledge?
on the job? It is
Yeah.
there is. I was, like I said, I was extremely blessed. Like, my father who raised me did an amazing job. Awesome man. I've been able to support him. We're approaching 2 months since my mother passed. And, when he, that was my first time seeing him emotional, crying in a state where he was really, the first time where, even at his age, he's Mr. Fictive. He could do it all. The first time where I'd ever seen him through my eyes of this was something he couldn't fix. So even seeing him in that state, and I'm like, but he's been able to fix everything. He's been great. He's been strong, despite him being diminutive in stature. But always just was a solid dude. And no matter how much I could want to imitate him or mirror him, all of the amazing things he did, even he had to learn on the job. Like, there ain't no manual for this. There ain't no book. Like, outside the Bible, ain't really no book for this. Like, no one is teaching you about that first couple of days of brown poop in a diaper. No one is teaching you. Juan also has a daughter, so Juan knows. I don't know if you have sons or daughters. I know Lax has daughters. No one prepares you for walking down the aisle of a grocery store, like your 12-year-old daughter going, I need to go down this certain aisle. Like, no one prepared you for that mentally. Like, there is no book of how to handle those conversations, of how to handle conversations about sex, sexuality, faith, if they're succeeding or failure. This is as much on the job training you will ever have. I spent 5.5 years as a cop, way less training to this with these 5 kids, man. Way less training, way less books. It is on the job training.
A good friend of mine said to me, I asked him before he became a father, and I already was one at the time, but I asked him, I said, because his father didn't raise him. He didn't grow up with his father. His grandparents raised him. And I said, how do you know that you're going to be a good dad? Like, how do you know how to do it? And he said, I've seen enough wrong and experienced enough wrong. I have an idea what right is. And I thought that was so profound. And I say the same thing. Like, you in those moments where you feel wrong, like you talked about this, Doc, the connection was missing. And I know I never wanted my child to feel the way I felt when I was around my dad. Right. So so that's what I thought about. Like, what do I do in this moment so she doesn't feel like the disconnect, or she doesn't matter, or I'm not enough for him. I just want him to look at me. I want him to say this. What do I need to do? So she doesn't feel that way when she's in my presence.
Interestingly, as Augusta said, it's an on-the-job training. And I remember becoming a parent, and my wife and I, there's no book, but based on where she came from, her upbringing and my upbringing, we kind of put minds together. Sometimes she might say, do it this way. I said, do it this way. Now, who am I as a guy to tell a lady who bore that child how to do this? I think the women always have that instinct, because that child was with them for that period. And, but it was very interesting. And there was no animosity of right or wrong. It was just, let's do it this way. And it worked. It worked. We saw them, child might get a little cut, and you go back to the whole thing. Okay, now you don't have the right tools here. Do you get up ice? What do you do? And you just went along. So I think it has a lot to do with your upbringing. Two family or two different households coming together, and you kind of watch what was going around when you were growing up. How did your mom or dad treat you in certain circumstances? What happened? And I think that's the genesis of how we did it, and we would act like we are pros. Or sometimes you might even go out and you see other parents doing certain things, and you kind of look over there and say, "Oh, okay, let me copy that." So your environment has a lot to do with also. If it's a great environment, where you have a positive thing, or the negative, you get to a stage where you learn to weed and decide, okay, no, that's negative over there. I don't want my child to get involved in this. And we always say, before we became parents, we used to wonder, man, how come that parent over there allowed a child to do this or whatever it is? It has nothing to do with it. We do all stuff. My two boys one day said to me, Dad, if we do anything wrong, it's not because of your teaching. It's just that we want to try.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got to be careful not to be judgmental.
Yep.
Parents. We got to be careful because, the individuals have a mind of their own, and they act irrespective of what you taught them sometimes. But I'm one who believes that they always come back home at some point. Once they have the foundation, they tend to come back home more often than not. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that I learned to be a father from my mother. Mm-hmm. She was my teacher. She was my teacher, and I say that because most of the good values that I have, I learned from her. And seeing her, what she went through, her commitment, her dedication, and wanting the best for her children. Even though I was learning that from a woman, it transferred over into what I wanted for my children.
Yeah.
And also watching my siblings, of course, a few of them are older than I am, and watch how they are with their situation. And just being overall supportive of each other, we learned from each other as well.
Yeah.
One thing we knew for sure, that our children would do better than we did in terms of being supported from a father or a parent. So, all right. So again, Elizabeth jumped in and she said, people learn to become fathers from many places. I think she's summarizing what we've all said. Their own fathers, good or bad, interestingly, right? We learn what not to take with us and what to take with us, their communities, their faith, and life itself. But the most powerful lesson often come from choosing to grow, heal, and be the kind of father you wish you had. And that's what we're talking about, becoming the father we really wanted in our life, right? That's what we're talking about. So what have you chosen to do differently than your father? Juan, what have you chosen to do differently?
I would say at whatever cost or expenses, fight for my child. And what I've learned to do differently is, because of course I didn't, what I do with Savannah, I didn't get growing up, but I sit down, before she could talk, and especially since she started talking, we talked through everything, and I've always told her and helped her to understand that her voice matters and daddy cares, daddy wants to hear, and so just every waking moment, we're talking through emotions, feelings, scripture, just application of scripture, and just relationships, all the different things, so that's what I chose to do differently. We would talk about being present and showing up in that way, that I'm a parent through it. Whatever I got to do, I'm a parent through regardless. I'm a parent through it. So that's what I chose to do differently. Was to be fully engaged, I think is what you said earlier. And to me, fully engaged is in everything. Whether I agree with it or not, if I'm upset, whatever it is, I talk to her about everything. And I explain it. We talk, and I apologize. One thing, we didn't get growing up, I'll say daddy made a mistake, daddy apologized. Daddy was wrong, or daddy shouldn't assume. I say stuff like that. So she knows daddy's human, and daddy's gonna make mistakes. So I just show up and I'm fully engaged, no matter what the costs are. I'm there.
And Juan, your dad was not absent in the sense of not being there totally.
Mhm.
Is that correct? It's just
That's correct.
the relationships and support.
Correct.
That's correct. So imagine not having a dad present.
Mm.
Everything you're doing is different, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I would say, in my case, that was the case because he certainly was not present. So again, I just knew that it was always going to be a win. It was always going to be a win because
Mhm.
everything was improvement. If you didn't have, if your dad was not present, right? If you're moving in the right direction, if you're trending in the right direction to be a father, to be so you just knew that you had to be present, you had to be there for them, you had to be their protector.
Yes.
I one of the most difficult and challenging thing. What was very challenging for me, even for them to go away to school and campus, that was not easy.
Hmm.
And I don't think they ever did that. And that was intentional. But the question then is, can you become too protective? Can you become overprotective? Dr. McCook, I put that one on you.
You know, I've thought about that so many times, and it's just that you never know. We want each generation to be better than we are. So are we spoiling them by giving them a car early while we had to go work and buy a car? You know, you just want to do better than the times I grew up in Jamaica, and we're talking about father and what you have done differently. My father passed early, but then again, I was playing soccer and all that stuff. And back then, parents not going to come watch you playing no football. Football, we call it back then, and all that stuff. So when I became a dad, I made sure I was there. I went to all the games, the practice and everything. I would drop them off at the football practice, and I use the opportunity to walk around and do my exercise. So, you're trying to bond with them while, give them something that you didn't experience and I didn't experience as a child because my dad was there. I remember because he wasn't there and I would see other kids with their dads going to places and I got jealous. And it was painful. Not any fault of his, but then, so as a dad now, I made sure they had that. They had the support. I remember my son when he grew up and he was driving around and he says, "Dad, you used to do a whole lot because you used to drive us here, you used to be in Carolina, all over the place." I mean, I'm a real estate broker, and I would hope on weekends I don't get any clients because I want to go watch the soccer games, So that's what I took from that, and it's just a great feeling now.
Augusta, what have you chosen to do differently from your dad, and are you overcompensating?
I would say what I've chose to do differently. I will say this from the standpoint of my family goes back and watch these later. I can say this from the standpoint of for my birthday. So I'm Augusta the third. The first Augusta had a litter of children by a multitude of women. The second Augusta had a just 3 kids by 2 wives. So me, my sister, and my younger brother. The consistency with the 2 of them was just philandering and lack of like emotional intelligence to understand the situation, and really a lack of presence of wanting to be there. I have a better relationship now with my birth dad, but I realized even something that he told me at 24 or 25 years old, where he said, I really wasn't equipped to be a father. And at no point, like mentally, did I like really want to be one. And I was thankful to hear that from him, even though by then I was a whole grown adult. But I was like, it gave me a lot of peace and closure because I said, okay, I was never the kid who was like, oh, you left because of me. I was always like, this ain't no me, bro. I'm awesome. Clearly, it's a you thing. So, but hearing him say that, I'm now able to sit here today and say one of the things that I did differently was, even though I got divorced, I still am an active participant. Like, I didn't disconnect. I didn't allow, well, we're not together, so we'll move away. No, it was like, okay, I'm not there. How do I figure out this dynamic now as no longer in the house dad? How do I still set standards, guidelines? How do I operate in this? So the thing that I would say that I did differently was I remained present. I remained active. I didn't allow the end of the relationship with their mother to intervene or disconnect me from my activeness as a father. From a standpoint of overcompensating, I think we all overcompensate as parents. Talk with Tremaine all the time where he says, the world is so crazy. And I think just at my age, me being, I believe, the youngest person on this panel, I still tell a story of remembering riding with my great uncle and aunt in the front seat of a car with no seatbelt as he drunk beers. It was like 1991 when this was happening. Like, this wasn't the 70s. Like, we were on back roads because he had suspended license and drinking behind the wheel. And this was the 90s. This was the 90s. So I look at, the world is dangerous in this, but I'm a bit overprotective, but it's not from the standpoint of not just their safety, but I had a really good standard of a father in the home. So I want to make sure, like, okay, let's start there. So, I always want my kids to pursue things and be better than me. If you don't want to go to college, you want to go get a trade or go to the military, my mindset is always, I just want you to grow greater than me. Because I feel like as parents, and specifically as fathers, when you reach a level in life and you look at your child and it's not, anger, but like disappointment that they didn't achieve something, not just for them, but like you knew they had higher expectations and they don't, it's like a little bit of hurt. So I'm like, my mindset is always like, yeah, I'm kind of going to be overprotective. I'm kind of going to push the gas, but I see the greatness in you. And I know that you could be far greater than me. And I'll still love you if you don't. It'll hurt a little bit. But that is the overprotective nature, is the less overprotective and more, I really want to push you to pursue something, because something inside of you is far greater than you'll ever understand.
So let's hear from Juan about being overprotective, and then we'll move on to the next question.
I do think you can become overprotective. As far as myself, I don't think that I am. I somehow I don't know. I don't think that I am. I think I have enough. I don't. I think because I've come to peace with. Now I'll say when she was much younger, absolutely, I fight anybody. Like, no, but I had to listen to God. And he was like, "Give her to me, because if you don't, you're gonna lose your mind." And you won't be here. And so I had to turn her over, and it doesn't mean I don't worry sometimes or have questions, but I honestly had to do, and I'm still doing it. I haven't arrived, but I'm still doing the work where I'm learning to trust God, that the same way that he kept me, that he's keeping her. So when we're not around each other, he's with her, and so even when she's with me, again, when we go back to, I was saying earlier about the conversations, I talk her through everything. Of course, I watch it from a distance, but I want her to be able to meet people, introduce herself, be able to listen to that voice if something is off, if somebody is off, whatever it is, to listen to it and respond to it without daddy saying, "Hey, do this, hey, what?" So I back up and I allow her to develop that intuition, that voice, to develop that ability to hear God and to respond. So I try to. It's not easy. I think we all know that, but I try to sit back and just allow her to discover, find herself. So that's again, I said it's a process.
It is a process indeed.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth Sitawa is saying something that she's acknowledging something, that she's a single mother, and quite a few of us live in that situation. So she says she's playing roles that she shouldn't. Yeah, so that's quite interesting. She's playing roles that she shouldn't. Interestingly, and I can't speak. I need to be careful when I say this, but a number of the young women in Kenya are single parents. A number of them. which is so interesting to me. And we're talking about, and in America as well, right? And in Jamaica, and everywhere it seems, right? We have a lot of single women out there who are having children, right? Having children. And these are very intelligent, educated women, but yet they keep doing it, and then the men sometimes just disappear, which is quite interesting. And again, that's another conversation. Next time we do something like this, we'll bring some women on the panel to get their perspective.
That'll be good.
All right, so let's go to the silent struggle, spoken strength. And we're going to move it through a little bit faster than we have. So we may skip a little bit and go, not all of us won't answer the same question. So we'll just keep it moving. But the question here is, why is it so hard for men to talk about emotional wounds? Juan, why is it so hard for men to talk about emotional wounds?
We weren't raised to do so. We weren't given the tools, and Augusta touched on this. He said emotional intelligence. For many of us, that's underdeveloped, and so many of us don't know, or if we do know, we don't feel comfortable with using that type of language or holding those type of conversations about what we're feeling or what we're going through, or even self-doubt or any of that. Emotional wounds, what hurt us. I think for societal reasons or societal constructs, we've learned to push through it. You're a man, suck it up. And I honestly, personally, often fight with the thought that even when things happen, well, you're a man, you figure it out. And sometimes when you don't know what the next is, you get stuck. I get stuck, and I'm frustrated, because then I start with that whole that thought that, well, I'm a man, I should be able to figure this out. Or I'm a man, I shouldn't be experiencing this. I'm a man, I shouldn't feel this way. And I really have to sit in that seat and really face those things head on. And what I've learned is that even when I do talk to close friends, confident, I don't talk to everybody. When I do, I can see even for them sometimes it's uncomfortable what I'm sharing, because it's like, wait, you're weak, you're struggling. You don't know, and you don't feel strong. And I can see that even with the people that are the closest to me, seeing me in that way, is like, I'm not used to this, because you usually know, or you usually see, or you tell us or give us, and so being able in that place, sometimes when you don't feel comfortable to even share that, you keep silent, you work through it.
And we grow up, or we are growing in a society that teaches us that we cannot. It's not manly to admit your pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
accept your pain. Can't speak up. We have to bury the hurt, right?
Yeah,
we got to bury the hurt. We believe that, and you said silence. That strength is being silent, and that showing emotion is a liability.
Yeah,
and we see that being modeled all around us, right?
A liability.
Wow. In your life or not, you don't see men being that way. So, but what's the problem when you do that? What is the problem? You're carrying all this pain around with you, and it's starting to affect your relationships, right? And so forth. So, what is the answer, Dr. McCook? Should we speak up? Should we acknowledge our pain? Should we own it publicly, or should we carry it?
I think we should own it, but we gotta be very careful how we own it. And when I say that, I mean, I always think that something is happening right now. You have to be able to convert that pain and teach them that we all feel pain, but how we treat it and how we convert it into something that eventually is going to be positive. I always think of it that when we go through pain a lot of times, or challenges, I think it's a test from God, and we just have to pass the test. How do we pass the test? We don't walk around with our emotions, droopy, and everybody around you is unhappy. You have to find a way to be strong. Not that you're going to be macho, but you have to find a way to be strong. So those looking on, especially your sons, realize that yes, painful situations or circumstances are going to arise, but how you treat it and how you convert it into that positive thing to show that, yes, we can overcome. Letting them know that giving up is not an option. We're just going to find a way to solve the issue at hand in a manner that is not boisterous. You have to learn how to inhale. When the thing is coming at you or somebody coming at you, you need to calm it down. So when it hits you, the pressure is coming to you at 90 miles an hour, and your system has to be able to absorb it and bring it down to 40, where you can deal with it. And then from there, you evolve and show them that, look, it can be done. You don't have to. They say, I heard something yesterday. Somebody, I was at church, and they say the thing about the eye for an eye, and the person said, be careful of eye for an eye, because you might lose an eye. So if you hold an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, yes. If you go eye for an eye, you might lose an eye or two. So be careful. So it's a way of challenging whatever is happening inside and trying to be realistic to them so that they don't go out there in the real world and think, oh, everything is peachy peachy. Yes, there is pain, but how do we assess the pain, digest the pain, and extract that pain from within? That we move forward.
So Dr. McCook, so you want to talk about it, but you're going to be guarded about it. Is that what I'm hearing you saying?
Yes. You got to be guarded and make sure that they understand that, hey, yes, there's pain. I'm feeling pain, but this is how I'm going to deal with it. I'm not going to get off. I'm not going to get depressed. A lot of time when you have pain, you become depressed. It depends on the situation. So you have to make them know that there's going to be sad and happy. You can't be happy all the time. But during those sad times, you have to be strong enough.
Let me put something out there, and then gentlemen, you can comment on it. What if this pain that we are carrying become generational trauma? What if the silence becomes that bondage? And do you believe that healing truly begins the moment you give yourself permission to speak freely and be seen? Just put it out there. Is there such a thing, Augusta?
I would definitely say that those, it's a generational curse for a reason. You have to decide, does it carry on or does it end? It, like I said, with I was a third generation stepfather. My oldest daughter, who I've raised since she was 4 or 5 months old. But I realized with me, I said, hey, listen, this abandoning children, this not being active, this not being present, this ends with me. And I remember, after, took about a year after getting divorced and going to therapy and taking time, but I remember like screaming out loud, like yelling at God, like this ends with me. Like my son won't have kids, my daughters won't have kids, and it ends bad with people. I said, no, this is it. Like we're not abandoning, we're not leaving. And you have to stop it. But again, it comes down to choice. Like once you take that ownership, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's in the space of, he coaches parents. And he asked, what is it that, changed with this? And I said, the second you could take ownership that there is a problem and it needs to be fixed, and I don't want it to affect my kids. And I think very often, in our community, and that's throughout the diaspora, you said in Kenya, single mothers, and in Jamaica, and you see it, throughout other cultures, but I can only speak for mine. And you see these things happen, absent father and mother, this and that. And it's like, you will watch people who lived a very poor existence of no father or no mother in the home or whatever the trauma was, and have an opportunity to see it, target it, and fix it. But instead, they just fall into, and it's like, that is how you see it, you have to end it. If you don't end it, it just continues to repeat. So if you're finding yourself in that rut of, my dad, my aunt, my uncle, and this is a continuing thing, you have to decide, okay, where does this end? And do you want to be man or woman enough to say it ends with me?
And can it end until you release it? Until you release it, whatever that is. Yeah. So release is important. One, you're writing your memoir, right? You're writing a book.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful book. Clearly, you're willing to make everything public.
Yes.
You're willing to put it out there. Yeah,
it's scary. It's scary.
Gary,
Yeah.
how do you get that courage? A lot of us can't put it all out there. We're very careful how we talk,
Hmm.
even this
Well,
platform.
you said this, and the word you used was bondage, and I've heard that, and for me, holding on to this was keeping me had honestly became a stronghold. And so what I realized most of my life, even as a child, adolescent, even young adult, even in my family, I grew up in a blended family, and a lot of things weren't talked about, the truth of the matter or the reality. And so I learned how to be present but be silent, and not be seen. And I took that on into so many other areas of my life. And I to the point where I almost forgot my story, or what it was, what my reality was, because I was putting on for everybody else. And I didn't think that my story mattered because I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. I didn't want to upset anybody or cause any divide, or especially my parents or my father. And I realized that was the stronghold, And I'll say this, Augusta touched on this. I honestly think that curses, as we call them, or transferences, generationally happen because one generation doesn't teach the next, or one generation doesn't put a halt to something before the next has the opportunity to either pick it up and carry it. And so I think a lot of the stuff that we refuse to talk about and be honest about ends up, we think is secret or silent, but some way, fashion or form, the next generation picks it up. And we think that if they didn't hear us say it, then they won't practice it, but they do what they see, not just what they hear. And that was big to me. So I was like, you know what? I realized how liberating telling my story is, and just by chance, it may set somebody free, because that's what it's doing for me, And I no longer want to stay in bondage, trying to spare others' feelings, because it's my story. And you said it earlier, you don't have to agree. I've learned that I'm the oldest of 8. We all could have grown up in the same house, same parents, different experiences.
So
I realized that.
let me close this piece by saying that silence is not strength; it is bondage. So we will
Right.
leave that one on
Right.
that to support what you're saying, one. And Elizabeth really nailed it. She said, many men were raised to believe that showing emotion is weakness. They were
Yeah.
taught to stay strong, stay silent, and man up. So opening up feels risky, unfamiliar, even shameful. But healing begins when they create safe spaces for honest conversations, right? I have seen this a lot from a lot of men fighting cancer silently and can't come out to ask for
Mm,
us to talk. That's the danger of not speaking your truth. And your truth is not just about the good things that are happening in your life. Your truth is about you. And who you are, is about all the elements, all the components, good and bad, that is happening in your life. So I personally believe that the sooner we can look in the mirror and tell ourselves that this is going on and then share it, it's no longer your problem.
Yeah.
mm,
You've given
Yeah.
it away. You've given it away. So, but I know it's not easy to do. She also said men don't have to share everything publicly, and I completely agree, but owning up,
Yes.
whether in private or public, is powerful. Accountability, vulnerability, and honesty inspire others and break the silence that keeps many trapped. Healing isn't about shame, it's about courage. Speak to
mm.
someone, it's therapeutic, but speak to the right person is what I'm hearing.
Yes. That's important. That's important.
All right, so this two questions right here this question is gonna be for Dr. McCook and Augusta, just so we can keep it moving. How do you model emotional experience for your children? Augusta, you want to go first, then Dr. McCook.
Oh man, emotional. I'm emotionally intelligent. I recognize this is the time to, and it's taken 5 kids to really learn all of this because you treat each of them differently because they can doesn't apply what fits for. It's not a one size fit all, but making sure that I show up from a standpoint of emotionally understanding what's needed to be in that moment, what needs to be said, not being said. Moments where it's like, I can speak to my kid this way. I can be vulnerable. I can't be. But really, the best way for me to be that emotional intelligence, understanding where they are. Can certain conversations, can they be had with them right now? Will they go over their head? Recognizing and meeting them where they are from an emotional standpoint. Right now, I need to be your shoulder to cry on versus, hey, right now, this may not be the moment for me to be your shoulder to cry on. I might need to have a firmer hand. I might need to be softer. Just understanding in that moment emotionally what is needed. And that's what I make sure that I do for all of them, ensuring that I understand wholly before I respond what emotion is needed in this moment.
Dr. McCook, you're on deck, sir.
Oh, I thought I was getting another question. Same question?
Yeah, same question. Yeah.
Okay. What was it again? Emotional.
The question is, how do you model emotional intelligence for your children?
Okay. Well, we spoke earlier about that silence, men being silent, but if your action, you can be silent verbally, but your actions can be loud. And I think that's a powerful way to do certain things. I have situations where there are things that I would want to say verbally, but I know it's going to cause pain to someone, and it's in my past, so I leave it right there. For my kids now, it's just trying to be strong, irrespective of the circumstance. Try to be strong, and I always tell them to listen to the Father above. Something may be happening, and I may have to say, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And just teach them along that line that, hey, life has challenges. I never make them feel that it's a bed of roses outside there. Although they may see that, I remember my sons, all the kids used to come by the house here because, this is the house to be and all that stuff. And, the other kids would come and say, oh my God, But then they were able to say, boy, Dad, you work hard. So it's the hard work that is paying off. The other parents may not be doing as much as you and mom are doing. So you have to set that example and make them know that they can cry. That's one thing I tell them. Hey, you can cry. You can cry. Get it out. Get it out of you. I remember Dr. Lax when I was taking my becoming a broker, and back then this was a new way that they were having brokers. It wasn't more multiple choice, it was simulation. And I took that exam because we were the guinea pigs and waited for the result. And when the lady gave me the result and said, you passed, I remember one teardrop coming down here. And she saying, what happened, sir? I said, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. So, we don't have to verbalize. We can do it in action. And just be good examples, just be good leaders to our kids. And I mean, I think let me pat myself on my shoulder. I think I've done it.
Let's give Dr. McCook an extra pat. Awesome. All right, let's pivot to building legacy intentionally. And the question is, or the theme, what we're going to talk about, I am my family's turning point, right?
Wow.
I am, and the question is, what does legacy mean to you? Dr. Juan, what does legacy mean to you? And we're talking about being a father here, all right? What does legacy mean to you?
Yeah. I would definitely say something that, of course, that you're passing on, right, from one generation to the next. I would say it would be a legacy attached to my values. I believe in with 3 values that everything I do is to equip, educate, and empower. And what I would say as a father building that is that same equipping, that educating and empowering. It matters to me that my daughter, and if I so end up having more children, but my daughter knows that she holds a significant place in time. Right. Mm-hmm. And me preparing her for what life could look like and could sound and feel like once I'm gone. What is she carrying on? And that legacy of it's so many things, but definitely a legacy of values, of self-value, self-worth, of faith, so it's those things that I value, that I hold on to. That's the legacy as a father that I'm working on building. And it starts with those three: equip, educate, and empower. That's what I live by, those three values.
All right, we'll just leave it at that, and that's big. But I want all of us to answer this question because I believe it's so important. What advice would you give to a father who didn't grow up with love or guidance? Augusta?
What advice would I give to a father who grew up without love and guidance? Did not
grow up with love or guidance.
You do not have to recreate the existence that you had. You have an opportunity, and even pivoting at a legacy, you have an opportunity to do this totally fresh. Just because, it didn't come with any instructions or any tools or any guidance, you have an opportunity to. The amazing thing about fatherhood is, regardless of if you had one, if you didn't have a dad, a mom, whatever situation is, you have an opportunity right then and there to start from afresh. This is your chance. Like, you growing up without that guidance, that love, those affirmations, those hugs, that care, you have an opportunity to change it. Like, you could write your own story. It doesn't have to be a continuation. It doesn't have to be the next chapter in the book of failure. You could literally start afresh with your own children, your own tribe, your own legacy. That's what I would say. Like, you could close that other book and start a new one. The Bible begins in Genesis, the beginning, the foundational, the framework. You have an opportunity to be the genesis of your own legacy. So you can, do you want to do that, or you want to, be a Revelation, or, Judges. You just want to be another book in this chapter of, like, lack of love, lack of presence, of failed fathers. No, you don't have to. I would tell them, write your own story. You don't have to repeat it. You could begin afresh. You could start anew, and you could mold this the way that you want it to be.
Dr. McCook, you look like you're rearing to go at this one.
Man, it's pounding at me. It's like, wow. I would tell them, as these things that you say, look in the camera and speak to the person out there. I'd look them in the camera, look them in the face, and you ever see these people on TV when they have the debates going on, and the guy looks in the camera. So I look in the camera and I say, break that bondage. Be the change agent. Don't be that status quo. It's difficult for you. Yes, you've been held down, your father, everybody, and you're feeling pain today. But let's translate that pain. Let's translate that pain into something good, so that your kids from now on will be different, and you will be that change agent that made the difference in the lives of those who are going to come after you. Don't look in the rearview mirror. I give a story that when I was leaving New York and I was driving down here, I wanted to get rid of New York so much that I took off my rearview mirrors, so I didn't look back. It was forward ever and a backward never.
You're still not looking back.
Not looking back. No review.
No rearview mirror.
So be that change agent.
Kick out that bridge. Dr. Juan.
What came to mind real quickly is four things. I'll write them down so I don't forget. This 40. I'll be 42 in a couple of weeks, y'all. So try to keep a sharp mind. But I wrote this. I said the advice to a father who didn't, experience that love, or that guidance, that presence. I would say, number one, you get to choose. You get to choose the father you want to be, the man that you want to be. Secondly, you are enough. Despite, in spite of, you are enough. Thirdly, you are the standard. You set the standard. And then lastly, you're not too late. And those are for fathers who are looking back and realize that mistakes were made, that it's not too late. You haven't missed it. You have time.
Well said, Dr. Juan.
My number one advice is you don't need an example to be a good father.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Don't wait for one. Don't make excuses that no one taught you. And just be consistent and be a good listener to become a good father.
Yeah.
Listen to your children. They can teach you a lot. They can teach you how to be a good father to them, believe it or not. They can teach you. And understand that your children are not necessarily seeking perfection. They need you present. They need you in their lives, right? And that they want you to love them, care about them, and respect them. So don't be a father who is afraid to grow, to learn, to become better at being a father. Don't be that person. So that's my advice. That as we're drawing down, we have a few minutes left. This is an opportunity here just to give a closing argument. And Augusta, let's start with you. What's your final thoughts on the conversation we're having today?
I would say you don't have to repeat things that have been done. The failures you've seen, the shortcomings you've seen, you could start afresh. Isaiah 58:12, and they shall be of thee, shall build the old wasted places. Thou shalt raise up the foundations of many generations, and thou shalt be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of the past, to dwell therein. And that verse spoke to, there's been some failures, there's been some flaws, there's been a whole lot of disorganization in the past of this family, of this generation. But amongst one of you is going to rise up somebody who could fix it all. It'll clear it all. And there are some people out there who you may literally be called to be that person in your family. And at times you may be the only one praying, fasting, the only one trying to call people, check in, but you have an opportunity to end all of the other stuff. But you've got to decide, do you want to do it? Do you want it to change? Or do you just want that generational curse to be the thing your family is known for? It's up to you. You have a choice. You could write a new chapter.
You have a choice. Dr. McCook, final thoughts?
Yeah, just to say that forget about the status quo. Just think of you as an individual who can make a difference. Peer pressure, especially younger folks, very, very, very can be very detrimental. Peer pressure. If it's peer pressure in a good way, because you can have good and bad. You just have to be able to decipher and just think about the results, the impact it's going to have on you first, because you got to think about yourself. And as a result, if it has a good impact on you, then you can share it with the world. But if it's having a bad impact on you, you need to stop right there in your tracks and just find a better way. As Dr. Juan said, it's never too late. It's not too late. So just focus, have an open mind, be a good listener, and just make a difference in this world.
Be a good listener, make a difference in this world. And it's never too late. Well said. Well said. Before I share my piece, let me just say what Elizabeth said. She says, it's never too late to turn your heart around. Your past doesn't disqualify you. Grace is still. Start now, seek God, show your children what humility, growth, and redemption look like. A changed life speaks louder than a perfect one. It is never too late. You can write your own story. And again, it's interesting because she's summarizing what both of you said so far. So again, If you're watching us, you're watching Bridging Generation, Voices of Men in a Changing World. And we need not say what a changing world we're living in. I just know that us here on this platform, we're doing the work we're called to do. And I really appreciate you, gentlemen, for what you're doing, for coming on and committing your time to have what is not an easy conversation. It's not, because you're speaking your truth. You're showing yourself. You're just being on here. You're making yourself somewhat vulnerable.
Yeah.
But I see that vulnerability as nothing but strength. And that you're able to come on and do this is just so commendable. And it speaks to who you are as a leader, that you're willing to give of yourself for others to learn. All right. So here are some tips for anyone out there listening. Be authentic. Personal stories are powerful, Juan. They create awareness. They speak volume. All right. Vulnerability builds connection. And reflect on moments that shaped your fatherhood journey. Very important. And that's what we're doing today, right?
Yeah.
Reflecting on moments. And I don't know how often you sit by yourself and you process these things that we're talking about, but we're sure doing it here publicly, right? And we're doing it in a global way. And speak from your heart, your truth will resonate. And I know that's exactly what happened in this conversation today. So my closing thoughts is this was indeed a powerful conversation.
Yes.
And it reminds us that healing is not a destination. It is a decision, right? Every father represented here today on this panel has shown us that we are not bound by the limitations of our past. We are not defined by what we lacked, but by what we choose to become. And to break a generational curse is to stand in the middle of what was and what can be, and to build a bridge with love, presence, and purpose. This is real sacred work we're doing here. And while the world may not always see the effort that your children are making, at some point your communities will. So keep on supporting your children and build a legacy that will echo for generations. So keep showing up as a father, keep speaking life as a father, keep healing loudly as a father. And again, gentlemen and anyone watching, thank you for lending your voice for the interaction that we've had from our those watching, from Elizabeth especially. You've really dig in and helped us with this conversation. So you are, and understand, gentlemen, you're not just fathers, you're foundation builders. Juan,
wow. You. I love that.
Nice.
Doc, you can't throw that out there and then just
that's how the mic.
Foundation builders. I love that. But I'll say this. I'll close with this. Our life and the things of life tend to attack us where God has already affirmed us. And what they could look like is the disconnect from a father, the absenteeism of a father, or so and so on. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it. And much of what you heard tonight, and I want to echo, is that the healing starts with you. So choose it today. Choose to forgive, to let go, because it's really big. I saw this saying. It says, holding unforgiveness is like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die. So choose forgiveness. Choose to let go. It's for you. Healing starts with you. I'll leave it there. We are foundation builders. We thank you for tuning in every week. Same day, same time, Mondays, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Like, comment, share. We appreciate you. Enjoy your evening.
Peace.
For everyone searching, wondering why you're here, it's time to rise. Time to find purpose. This is Daily Insights Unveiled, your odyssey to find purpose. I used to